Attention podcast listeners, this is Steve. So, as you know, I'm a dad to many children, and this episode of the podcast unfortunately required some discussion of some very mature and disturbing thematic content. This is not the kind of stuff I want my kids listening to. If you typically listen to the podcast with your kids, or if they're in earshot, this is the time to shut it off, send them to go do something else before you finish. Because once the intro music starts, we're going to be talking about it right away. So, you've been warned. Listener discretion is advised. On this episode of the OnePeterFive podcast,
public Catholic teaching outside of the classroom and outside of the pulpit is so foreign here that it's so shocking and it's met with such resistance and hostility. In my role as an RA, I'm required to post these bulletin boards. So in large font, it said marriage the way God intended it, one man and one woman. Several days pass. Last week, there's a cartoon found in my bathroom depicting me being raped, being sodomized. I have told them all along to come out with something to tell these students to stop harassing, stop intimidating, and then now it rises to a Title IX situation where I'm threatened with rape. And I was in my room, they knocked on my door and said, would you like to move? We're concerned for your safety. And I said, well, yeah.
Providence College senior Michael Smalanskas talks about the harassment that he has received for putting up a pro-marriage bulletin board at a Catholic college.
The first thing that Michael and I did was go to the administration and ask them very directly to make a statement that Michael was not to be harassed, his bulletin board was not to be vandalized, and they simply would not do it. It was very troubling. I thought it was a very reasonable request, and I was shocked that they didn't.
Longtime Providence College theology professor Dr. James Keating talks about his role as Michael's faculty advocate during this difficult time and the very disturbing lack of response from the school administration. If you are currently sending your child to a Catholic college or university or are thinking about doing so, this is an episode you can't afford to miss. Coming up next.
You're listening to the OnePeterFive podcast.
It is a real joy for us to welcome you all here. Habemus Papam.
Rebuilding Catholic culture, restoring Catholic tradition.
Hello and welcome to the OnePeterFive podcast, episode number 46. My name is Steve Skojak. I am the founder and publisher of OnePeterFive and the host of this show. As you heard in the intro, we're talking today about Providence College in Rhode Island. Providence College is, despite its rather secular name, a Catholic Dominican college founded in 1917 by the Dominican friars of the province of St. Joseph. The Dominicans run the school to this day, and the province of St. Joseph is known as one of the better provinces. They run the Dominican House of Studies in D.C., which is a very popular place for many conservative and traditional-leaning priests and seminarians to spend some time in their studies. But there's a problem at this campus. There's a big problem. Last year, it became famous. The school became famous in a negative way because Dr. Tony Esolen, who is a fairly well-known Catholic author, writer, speaker on important cultural topics of our day, left his tenured position at the school because he'd had enough with what was going on there. He was getting attacked for the things he was teaching. He felt that the school climate had become far too politicized. He was just not happy at all with the way things were going, and he just didn't see a way out for the school because they'd kind of backed themselves into a corner. This is my summary. He may, if I ever get him on the podcast, have a little bit of a different or at least more nuanced take, but there's the elevator pitch on that. So that was where I first heard about Providence College. Well, this week I heard about it again. And the reason is because there is a student there, a young man named Michael Smalanskas, who, he's a senior. He's a theology and philosophy major. So he's done his whole education there. But he's an RA at the dorm that he lives in. It's an all-male dorm. And he's a resident advisor. And one of his jobs as an RA at the dorm is that he manages a particular bulletin board that he is obligated to update, I think, once a month. And he's chosen to do various Catholic topics on this board because he cares about his faith and he wants to educate people about it. And I think it was a month or so ago, one of the other dorms, probably in February because it was the whole LGBT awareness month or whatever it is that they call it. One of the girls' dorms had a bulletin board that was supportive of lesbian marriage. And the bulletin board went up and nobody made a stink about it. And it was up for a month. So he became aware of it and he brought it to the attention of the administration. And the administration did nothing. And I think feeling a little frustrated and wanting to provide a counterpoint, when it was his turn to do another bulletin board, he did one about the sanctity of marriage, that it's between a man and a woman, that the Bible talks about what marriage is, that the Pope talks about what marriage is, and that children have a right to grow up with a mother and a father. It was very Catholicism 101. But for some reason, it really kicked a hornet's nest. He wasn't polemical in the way that the board was done. But he wound up getting the kind of response you would expect from somebody who was intentionally trying to provoke people. Started getting harassing texts, started having people hanging around outside his room at night, making him feel uncomfortable when he left. Eventually, the people, there were some RAs from other dorms who were letting themselves in at night, some of them against policy because young women were not supposed to be in the men's dorm at night after hours. They were there. Somebody tore the bulletin board down. And then, to make matters worse, he walked into his bathroom one day, and what he saw taped up was a hand-drawn cartoon with his name on it, depicting him being forcibly sodomized, raped, anally raped by another man as a punishment for him having put up this bulletin board. This is the kind of thing that, were it to happen in any other situation, had it been a young woman who had been depicted in that cartoon or a minority, I mean, the police would have been on campus. There would have been an investigation. Someone would probably have gotten arrested, at least thrown out of school. But because Michael at a Catholic college put up a Catholic bulletin board supporting Catholic teaching, nothing is being done. Nothing. He got a faculty advisor. The faculty advisor has gone to bat for him. He can't get any answers from the administration. The president of the college is a Dominican friar. He won't engage. Michael's parents have asked for a meeting with the president. He won't give it to him. This is not a huge school. This priest can make time to deal with this issue. And what I find particularly galling is that I'm right now, as I'm speaking to you, I am staring at the homepage of the Providence College website. It's providence.edu. If you want to go to it, just scroll down a little bit, and what you'll see is a large full-page image of the chapel overlooking the campus and overlaid with text that says Catholic and Dominican. What does it mean to be a Catholic in Dominican college? We invite you to explore this question and the distinctive mission of Providence College. I haven't taken the time to read the linked page that is about Providence College's Catholic and Dominican identity, but what I can tell you, based on what I have read and heard over the last week, is that it doesn't mean anything to be Catholic and Dominican at Providence College. It doesn't mean anything at all. Here we have a young man, a Catholic. He goes to a Catholic school. He puts up a bulletin board supporting Catholic teaching. He gets intimidated and harassed and essentially threatened with rape. Campus security takes it upon themselves to move him to a different dorm for his safety. He didn't ask, they offered. But the school won't do anything about it. And that's not the end of it. We're going to talk to Michael in a minute about everything that he's experienced. We're also going to speak today to Dr. James Keating, an associate professor of theology at Providence College, who has taken it upon himself to be Michael's advocate in theology, and faculty advisor. Dr. Keating has really tried to help Michael, and they're struggling to get answers. And what we're seeing is a college faculty that is either complicit with anti-Catholic political correctness and the zeitgeist, or one that is afraid of those who are. This is, an academic issue. This is a Catholic issue. This is a free speech issue. And whatever your opinions, I know our audience is very traditional, and freedom of speech is not something that was always prized in the history of the church. But in an environment as secular as America, and at a Catholic college, which apparently is as secular as Providence, the freedom for a Catholic student to speak his Catholic identity, that's important. Error might not have rights, but the truth does. So we're going to not waste any more time hearing my explanation of this. We're going to talk with Michael in a minute, right after this.
You're listening to the OnePeterFive podcast.
With me now is Michael Smalanskas, a senior philosophy and theology major and resident advisor at Providence College in Rhode Island. It's Rhode Island, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And it's also an ostensibly Catholic school. Michael has been the victim of what I can only really describe as anti-Catholic bullying, although it's actually worse than that when it's happening at the college level. That sounds a little too trivial. And the result of this happening is all because he put up a bulletin board in his dormitory saying that marriage was between one man and one woman, with some references to the teachings of the Catholic Church. Michael, thank you for joining me on the podcast to talk about this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
Yeah, my pleasure. So before we get to the issue at hand, I would like to talk to you a little bit about you. A lot of people describe themselves as Catholic, and obviously that means a lot of different things to lots of different people, which this story is bearing out. So where would you say you fall in the spectrum of Catholic belief?
Yeah, like you said, I'm a theology major, faithful Sunday, Mass attendee. I'm a regular reader of OnePeterFive. So, firm, solid, holds all the church teaches as true, sort of Catholic. So, yeah. Okay,
good. So we've established a baseline. You're an actual Catholic.
Yeah, correct.
So what was it then about Providence College that attracted you to the school? As a supposedly Catholic school, you said you're a philosophy and theology major. So how big of a role did the Catholic identity of Providence College play in your decision to go there?
It was a huge role. When I applied to colleges in my senior year of high school, I applied to a whole variety of, like you said, so-called Catholic colleges, many that I knew that weren't really Catholic. For instance, I was accepted to Georgetown, which was very prestigious, but I chose not to go because I knew it wasn't really Catholic. And same thing with Boston College and others. And I landed at PC because, I had been told and had researched that it was known for a solid Catholic reputation.
But you got there, and what did you find? You're a senior now, so you've spent several years there. How has your experience been as a Catholic? Do you just campus ministry, the masses? Are you getting spiritual direction? What has been your read on Catholicism at the school?
Well, the Dominicans they also are on a spectrum. And, the older generation is kind of, typical of, that group where they're very liberal. They are, first of all, they're hostile to the younger generation in many ways, and they're not, as faithful as they should be to what the church teaches. The younger ones, on the other hand, that we continue to see new young Dominicans come on campus. They're bold, fresh, really ready to fight for the truth and for the faith. But, the climate here has declined even in my 4 years. When I showed up, I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't as bad as it is now. And here we are at a point where, being public about your faith isn't welcome. I mean, campus ministry runs some great programs, and they're active insofar as you walk into the campus ministry center. And even there's a hesitancy to talk about the content of the faith. There's a lot of, feel good stuff. They have, pizza parties and, all sorts of things. But if you walk in there and you want to actually talk about doctrine or what the church teaches, I mean, even that is frowned upon. So it's been in rapid decline even in my 4 years here, and certainly has come to a head in the last few days.
That's really depressing, actually. But I mean, there's kind of a high profile situation that went on there last year. Professor Anthony Esolen, who's very well known, famously gave up on a long battle with the college. At the time, he said of his decision to leave his tenured position there, quote, "To live at a used-to-be Catholic school, no longer committed to the humanities, where all the big decisions are basically secular in their inspiration and aim, on a campus that is highly politicized and therefore treacherous, no, that's not for someone of my years," end quote. Do you think his assessment is correct? Is going to such a school something for people of any age if they have real beliefs?
Yeah, Dr. Esolen is right, on the mark there. And of course, I've been in communication with him in these last days and sort of parallel situations that have gone on between the two of us. And again, I was here when he went through his ordeal, and now I'm experiencing it myself. And again, back to the Dominicans, I mean, they have, especially the province of St. Joseph, the province that runs the school, they have a reputation for orthodoxy, especially compared to some of the other provinces. And even they have now become susceptible to being, overrun by a radical leftist agenda. He's totally correct. There's a secular wind has swept through the school, right up, all the way through the administration, and a dramatic shift away from truly being a Catholic college.
Can you tell me, I mean, are they an ex Corde Ecclesia school? Do they have to the professors have to take an oath of fidelity to the magisterium?
I don't want to say because I'm not positive, but I haven't heard that that's the case.
Okay, because that's a big deal. I know I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. Several of the more well-noted for orthodoxy Catholic schools, at least all the theology faculty, I think, I don't know that the philosophy professors have to, but they might choose to. But a number of the professors, I think, outside the discipline of theology, following John Paul II's encyclical Ex Corde Ecclesiae, in the heart of the church, they take the oath of fidelity to the magisterium, and they receive in exchange a mandatum, a mandate to teach from their local bishop. And it helps to keep them sort of on the up and up with theology. So I was curious if that was something that they did there, because I know that it's something that people look for in these schools. So, all right, we've talked a little bit about, the college, but I want to talk about what actually happened to you. You're an RA in a dorm. Talk me through the sequence of events that kind of transpired that led to the present moment.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a resident assistant. My role is to be a point of contact, a resource for the students, and I'm in a all-male freshman dorm. And this particular freshman dorm is the only dorm on campus that is co-sponsored by campus ministry. They have an initiative called the Gentlemen of St. Joseph program. This is in St. Joseph Hall. And it's, like I said, it's co-sponsored by campus ministry, and therefore supposed to have a faith component to it. And so throughout the year, I mean, I have posted, as in my role as an RA, I'm required to post these bulletin boards. And I put up a pro-life board one month. I put up how to be a Catholic gentleman. There's been several others. And so this month, I decided to go something of Catholic Church teaching. And I mean, the hostile reaction, I mean, back to what you're saying about the environment on the school. I mean, Catholic teaching, public Catholic teaching outside of the classroom and outside of the pulpit is so foreign here that it's so shocking, and it's met with such resistance and hostility.
So let me ask you a couple of specific questions. So first of all, you're saying that you have a history of putting this kind of stuff up. You've done it before, right? without any pushback?
Yeah, I mean, every RA is required to put up a bulletin board every month.
Okay, and it's something of your own choosing.
Yeah, the topic, there's no governing principle of what can or can't be put up there, but they do encourage political content if it's their political content.
Okay, so you've done this before. Was this bulletin board that you put up on marriage in response to anything in particular?
That's a great question, Steve, because there was a pro-lesbian bulletin board that was up for the entire month of February in one of the female residence halls. And, of course, there was no reaction to it whatsoever. It stayed up there untouched for a month. Nobody said anything. And I think you and I would firmly agree that that is directly contrary to the mission of the college as a Catholic school. I raised an issue through the chaplaincy office about that, and nothing was done. And so then I went and put up my board, and I've told everybody that it wasn't a direct response necessarily to that board, but the more the purpose of it was, of course, the instructional, there's content on there for people to see and learn, but also to just expose a double standard that something like the pro-lesbian board can exist untouched and untalked about for an entire month because it fits a certain agenda. And then something like this is not even remotely protected in the same way. And like I said, of course, I would argue that the school had an obligation to remove the other one and protect this one.
Right. So, okay. So what did your bulletin board say?
So in large font, it said marriage the way God intended it, one man and one woman. And then it had a large photograph of Pope Francis blessing a child with a quote from the Holy Father that says, every child has a right to grow up with a mother and a father. And then, it had a biblical quote on there, the two should become one flesh. And then just a few small images. One said marriage should be reinforced, not redefined. Another said, marriage, God ordained it, nature reveals it, science affirms it, a picture of a married couple. And that was it.
So just real basic stuff. I mean, this is not earth-shattering stuff. This is stuff anybody should, either hear or be familiar with, having gone to mass, and, taken a catechism class. Anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Catholic school, obviously, and there was nothing provocative on there. There was nothing that, addressed any individuals or certain groups, because I've been accused of hate speech and homophobia for what I did, because people are saying I targeted homosexual or LGBTQ groups or that sort of thing. But
it was non-polemical. It was literally just, hey, this is what the church says about marriage.
Yeah, it was just a positive affirmation of something that the church teaches.
Okay, so what kind of reactions have you gotten? You mentioned accusations of hate speech and homophobia, which, the favorite rhetorical cudgels of the left.
Of course.
What else happened?
So immediately upon putting the board up, I started receiving text messages from fellow RAs who are, so you should keep in mind that as an RA, I'm an employee of the college also. And so other employees of the college, other RAs are texting me, telling me this is discriminatory and all of that sort of thing. And then they start showing up. Several RAs show up in the building late at night, presumably to seek me out. A couple RAs tear down the board. They're like I said, in my building after hours, where they're abusing their power to get into the building. And public safety becomes...
Wait, did you say these were RAs from other dorms?
Yes, from other dorms entering.
Are they allowed to do this? Are they allowed to give themselves entry to any dorm they want for any reason?
Well, they can, but not after visitation hours. So, for instance, we at midnight, female students are not allowed in the male residence halls. And, there was a female RA who let herself into my building after those visitations.
So when I was in college 20 years ago now, which makes me feel old, the RAs had keys to get into the door. But now, do they have like key cards that they use to get in and out that, would log entry?
Yeah, I don't know if it logs entry, but they're just like swipe cards.
Okay. Huh. Well, I mean, if it's an electronic card, I would assume that it logs entry. And I'm just curious because, again, these are actionable security items that, you would think that the school could check to see that there's people doing stuff that they're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've raised, even there was a subsequent night where a larger group had crowded outside my door in my hallway, and it was after the time frame that they're allowed to be there. And I raised the issue to one of my bosses who showed up, and she said, well, it's not that far after, said, well, if it was me, I'm sure you'd be saying something.
Wait, hold on. In a normal case basis, how quickly would those people get written up?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I'm charged with enforcing rules to my residents that my coworkers, therefore, they don't have to live by themselves.
Is this an angry, pitchfork and torches mob? I mean, what were they doing out there?
Well, the first night it was, like a fellow RA let themselves into the building. A couple RAs tore the board down, and this RA who let himself in, he replaced my bulletin board with a banner that said, "Here at Providence College, we love everybody." And then, another female RA let herself in, like I said, presumably trying to find me. I don't know why else they would come in. And on subsequent nights, though, it's larger groups. They're congregating in the hallway. They're sort of milling around outside the bulletin board. And I step out to, walk down the hallway to use the restroom or brush my teeth or something. And they're there and they're waiting. And, they're not being particularly, they're not like shouting or anything. Although when I went out to go take a picture of them one time, they started shouting at me. But they just keep showing up, and they're clearly trying to intimidate and harass. This was, night after night for a while.
Of course, you've asked for help with this situation, and nobody in the administration is doing anything to assist you.
Oh, no. I had to be relocated to a different building that first night for my safety. Public safety relocated me across campus.
Who made that decision?
They offered it to me as a safety precaution. I was in my room. They knocked on my door and said, would you like to move? We're concerned for your safety. And I said, well, yeah.
But doesn't that indicate, if they're concerned for your safety, this is something that needs to be addressed, and they recognize that. Yeah,
and I've said all along to people that much of what has happened in my mind is preventable. Several days past, last week, there's a cartoon found in my bathroom depicting me being raped, being sodomized. And, I have told them all along to come out with something to tell these students to stop harassing, stop intimidating. And then now it rises to a Title IX situation where I'm threatened with rape.
Yeah, I've seen this picture of this cartoon. LifeSite News published it in their article about your situation. And, it's pretty grotesque. It's very stick figure cartoonish, but it is... it's obviously insulting and degrading. Did it come across to you more as some kind of a sick joke, or did you actually perceive this is threatening me?
I perceive it as threatening. I am named in it, and it says, I believe the quote on it is, what did I tell you about putting up your poster? And it has me, pleading, saying stop and sorry or whatever it says.
So this is your punishment for putting up this bulletin board, is what's basically the theme that's being depicted.
Yeah, and then, on a few days later, I believe it was over the weekend, I find another thing taped to the wall that says, "Why did you take down my meme?" which I assume references the stick figure rape cartoon. And so I perceive it as threatening. Everybody is aware of, the sexual assault, rape crisis situation we have on college campuses. These are Title IX situations are taken very seriously. And, I presume that it is a threat. And it's not being treated as such because I am, I'm not a female, I'm not a minority. They don't take it as serious.
Well, that's what's crazy to me is if it were a young woman in your situation, I wouldn't want to test this. If there were a young woman who had put up a pro-marriage bulletin board, I don't know if they would have treated her this way or not, because it's so much more sensitive. But there's literally the police would be there. There's no way, someone being named in a cartoon depicting graphically anal rape is going to, that's not going to fly at any institution anywhere I've ever heard of. And yet The school has done what about this cartoon?
Nothing. I mean, and they have come down harder on much less on this campus. And by way of administrative response, basically there's been 3 responses. The first response was an email sent to student leaders on campus from the Vice President of Student Affairs, Christine Goodwin, telling people that I took church teaching out of context and that she encouraged them to attend. They're having a march in protest.
In protest of what?
Because my board is being construed as homophobic and hate speech, they're now having a march against homophobia.
But hold on, what they have done to you is not hate speech.
No, of course, because again, it's a one-way street, and they are protected, and I am not.
Oh my goodness! I mean, I know it's bad, but really?
Well, I mean, it gets worse. The president, Father Brian Shanley, he also sends out a communication to students. He gives a very quick nod that Catholic teaching can't be considered homophobic. Thank you, Father. But then it immediately goes into suggesting that it seems to suggest that what I did was uncharitable in some way, and that this sort of stuff ought to be reserved for the classroom and the pulpit. So, 2 administrators, the president and the vice president, they clearly take sides. That they do not condemn the rape cartoon whatsoever, and I've also been asking them to affirm the mission of the college as being consistent with the content of the board. They will not do that. The only glimmer of hope that has come out, from anybody in any level of authority is from the 4 chaplains. 4 young Dominicans take it upon themselves to come out with a statement that was very good. That they affirmed church teaching. They exposed the other lesbian bulletin board. They did a nice job. I had hoped they would come out and actually say for people not to march. They came up short of that, but it was pretty good, especially considering. And it's what I was saying before, that you have a spectrum of Dominicans here. I mean, the young guys, by and large, are terrific. They came out with something that I don't think, it's not necessarily their role to have gone much farther, but they went significantly farther than the president himself.
Yeah. So we have, I see this as sort of a multifaceted situation. You are a student of this school, a paying student of the school, receiving harassment, intimidation, and threats for expressing your opinion about something that should be totally within the confines of the school's charter as a Catholic school. That's one. But secondly, as you mentioned earlier, you're an employee of the school, and you're receiving threatening and intimidating behavior from fellow employees in the form of other RAs. And this blows my mind that the college is not recognizing the enormous liability.
Well,
but they're opening themselves to here.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Steve. And the problem is I've continually asked them to condemn the harassment and the threats, which they haven't. And last night, not only will they not condemn them, they're facilitating it. So last night they hold a meeting. There's about 75 RAs. They hold a meeting with all 75 RAs, our supervisors, several deans of the college, 2 Dominican priests, public safety is there. It's a whole spectacle to talk just about my bulletin board. And so I, as the one who put up the board, who's been vilified and victimized, again, the victim of a Title IX situation, have to walk into a room of over 75 people so that they can vent their frustrations about how much I've harmed people. And they are given an open floor, an open forum to attack me directly. And it gets worse, Steve. They have the shades drawn, the doors are closed, and then they try to confiscate everybody's cell phones so that there's no record of what happened in that room. I left.
Who was trying to do the confiscating? Who was in charge of that?
A couple students complained because they're starting to see the news articles come out that they didn't want to be caught, on the record. They didn't want someone taking a photo or recording something. So a student suggested that everybody power off their phones and hand them over, and the administrators went with it. And they then required us to hand over our cell phones. And I left. I would not sit in a room with no protection whatsoever. And like I said, in what world would any other Title IX victim be subjected to, a public trial, basically.
You have no advocate with you of any kind.
Nope.
This is wow. Okay, so let's look at where we go from here. Have you, first of all, received any actual communication from Bishop Tobin? I saw that he tweeted something that seemed to vaguely reference the situation, but have you gotten any kind of more substantial support from the diocese? He
tweets a sort of reference to what's going on. He also retweeted a statement that came out from a group of professors. So a group of professors penned a statement of support in me and pleading with the college to affirm its Catholic mission. So he also retweeted that. And I've told people too, I said, in some sense, I think people would say that's not very much, but in another sense, social media is very public. And I mean, he himself is on LifeSite News sometimes for some, he's kind of a culture warrior.
This is Bishop Tobin, the good guy, not Cardinal Tobin, the bad guy.
Yeah, this is the good Bishop Tobin.
It's not Bishop Tobin of Newark, New Jersey. This is Bishop Tobin of Rhode Island. Yeah. So, but have you contacted the chancery? Have you talked to anybody at the diocese to say, look, this is going on, and where are my rights as a Catholic? I mean, anything?
Well, we were supposed to have a meeting with Bishop Tobin. So I had written him a letter, and one of his priests called me very shortly after he received that letter and granted me a meeting with him. Now, the meeting didn't happen. It was postponed. It seems that some news articles started to break, and my understanding is that he wanted to press pause and evaluate the situation, which is totally within his right to do, of course. But I've been reassured several times from a priest at the chancery that we will get to meet with Bishop Tobin soon.
Well, I mean, frankly, if dioceses and college administrations moved to actually act in a Catholic fashion in a reasonable amount of time, news articles and podcast interviews and all this kind of stuff wouldn't be necessary for you to be able to have any kind of standing, any kind of chance at fighting back against what is manifestly unjust. So, if they don't like that kind of thing, then maybe they need to get on the ball.
Yeah, and I have, like you said, this is the good Bishop Tobin. I have every confidence that he's doing things behind the scenes.
Good.
I mean, my question is where is the provincial of the Dominican order? This is a Dominican-run school, and Father Shanley answers to the provincial. So that's troubling that within the hierarchy of the Dominican order, there ought to be some real grave concerns here.
Well, okay, so what's your next step? I mean, it doesn't seem you're not getting a receptive response from the college. The diocese may or may not be helping you. I mean, is litigation the only way to protect your rights in this case?
It seems like it's moving that way, Steve. I mean, how many times can you keep asking them to protect you before you go and protect yourself?
Yeah. I mean, this is not just a harassment in Title IX. This is also a free speech case.
Precisely. I mean, there's a tremendous, like I said, there's a double standard. They have an obligation to publicly uphold my free speech. I mean, this is an institution of higher education. It's really troubling.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, it sounds like the faculty and the administration are overwhelmingly in the bag at Providence College for the pro-LGBT movement, and now obviously the student body is as well. What has this brought you to conclude about so-called Catholic colleges? I mean, is there such a thing anymore outside of a few universities? Like I mentioned earlier, those, the ones where the professors have to take the oath. Is there any meaning or value for most parents to send their kids to ostensibly Catholic institutions if this is the way they're going to treat the teachings of the church and those who uphold them?
That's a terrific question. My sense is that, of course, it's a great tragedy where our Catholic schools are. And, if we think back that, Catholics are and always have been the leading educators, leaders in healthcare with hospitals and, first-rate institutions, especially including education. And, we're finding that, Notre Dame or Georgetown or Boston College, while they are, highly reputable in the world of academia, they have a non-existent Catholic identity and even
become a punchline. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, amongst Catholics, oh yeah, Georgetown. That's Catholic.
Exactly. And now we're even seeing, Providence College is not on the level in any way of some of those schools, but even a small school like this is going that way. I mean, you really have, like Dr. Estlin, he went to Thomas More, other these really small schools which are doing, there are some small Catholic colleges that are doing tremendous things, but it's a travesty that our largest, most reputable Catholic institutions have completely given way, and therefore Catholic education is not competitive anymore.
Well, the crazy thing is, I mean, in just a few months, you're going to become an alumnus of Providence College, and a few months later after that, they're going to start calling you and asking you for money, because that's what they do. And they're not going to have any self-awareness of who you are and what this situation was. And it's that kind of tone deaf thing that happens, that, you're in a position where you're going to be going out into the world and you're going to have a choice. Do I recommend this college to other people, or do I say, hey, watch out for it? It just blows my mind that they're willing to throw that away for nothing. I mean, just for not running afoul of the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this then. This is really, my concluding question, that I saw that you're getting married at the college chapel this summer, which, you have to get special permission to do this. And, this is an effort that you made.
Uh-huh. I
have to be honest. After all this, I would not want anything to do with the school. I certainly wouldn't want to associate, this very special day with being on campus and doing all that. You say you're doing this as a final witness to marriage for the school. Is that really the motivation? I mean, are you going to feel good about doing it there?
Yeah, I think so, Steve. When my fiance and I decided, we got engaged the end of last June. And, immediately there was not even a discussion between us. It was just almost assumed that we would get married at Providence College. She comes from far away. So this has been our church. This has been our home for 4 years. And so it was so natural to us. And obviously only recently, even she has said to me, what do you still think about getting married there? And and there are people, and yourself may feel differently, but the way I see it is it's one thing for me. I'm doing interviews. I'm helping write articles and witness to the truth of our faith and of marriage in this way. But I think that is an even more powerful witness to marriage, to have my wedding, our wedding take place here on this campus, that there is nothing that will destroy, what we are about. And, we are firm, faithful Catholics, and that needs to happen here. It needs to physically happen here. People need to see it. People need to know about it. And for me, after all this has gone on, I want even more to get married at Providence College, because they need to see it.
Well, Michael, I appreciate your fighting spirit. My hat is off to you for handling this with calmness and with magnanimity. I can hear that you still have your sense of humor about all of this, even though it's obviously a difficult situation. Let us know if there's anything else we can do. And thanks for coming on to talk to us about it.
Thanks so much, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, podcast listeners. Most of you know that OnePeterFive is a tax-exempt organization. We're set up in the United States as a 501c3 dedicated to educating the public about the Catholic faith and the events that shape it. It also means that donations to OnePeterFive are tax-deductible where permitted by law. We provide our content for free in order to reach the greatest number of people possible with the truths of our faith. Our website is viewed hundreds of thousands of times per month, over 7 million times last year alone. We're among the loudest voices leading the fight against the corruption of Catholicism, but we need your help. As a reader and listener-supported organization, we can't do this work without you. If you believe that what we do here is important, I'd like to ask you to pause this podcast right now and go to onepeterfive.com/donate to show your support. No donation is too large or too small. Every bit helps us to advance our mission of rebuilding Catholic culture and restoring Catholic tradition. Thank you for your support. Joining us now is Dr. James Keating, Associate Professor of Theology at Providence College and the faculty advisor for Michael Smalanskas as he navigates this whole situation. Dr. Keating, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
So this situation with Michael is pretty disconcerting to me. It's troubling not just because he's being subjected to harassment and intimidation, but because it seems that the administration of the college is disinterested in doing anything about it. You seem to be the exception to that. What can you tell me about the situation from your perspective?
Yes, the first thing that Michael and I did was go to the administration. I had written emails before that, but we had gone to the administration and asked them very directly to make a statement that Michael was not to be harassed, his bulletin board was not to be vandalized, and they simply would not do it. It was very troubling to me. I thought it was a very reasonable request. They didn't have to. They didn't have to agree with the board because the people we were speaking to do not agree with the board. And but nonetheless, colleges should protect their students, especially when they're not feeling safe. And I don't mean feeling safe from ideas they don't like, but actually not feeling safe in their person.
Right.
And I thought they would do it. I know all these people very well. I've been here almost 20 years, and I was shocked that they didn't.
So when you said that they wouldn't, did they just completely ignore the request, or did you get a no?
What we got was that they would make a statement about the need for everyone to respect each other and to work through difficult issues. That was not our request, because, of course, that could be seen, as I think it was when it ultimately came out, as more about condemning Michael for offending people than protecting Michael.
You know, something that I asked him, actually, that I want to ask you as a theology professor, is Providence College an ex corde ecclesiae school? He didn't know.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so you guys don't have to take the oath of fidelity to the magisterium to have your mandatum to teach theology or anything like that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We basically go with the notion that the mandatum getting a mandatum is purely a personal matter, and with no expectations or no even information transfer with the college.
Okay. And I'm curious, on a personal level, I'm an alumnus of Franciscan University of Steubenville. All the professors there have to have a mandatum to teach, even if they're tenured. If they lose the mandatum, they don't get to continue teaching. And so there seems to be a certain correlation in schools where that happens between, I think, a more strong and protective Catholic identity. And so this is kind of what I'm trying to get at here. So Providence College is a Catholic school, but it's not protecting the Catholic identity of one of its students. And you pointed out something in one of your other media interviews that I think was really important to consider. You kind of put the shoe on another foot. You said that if a female student had put up a poster about a different issue and had been subjected to a cartoon depicting her being raped as a consequence of her views, how would the college react then? I mean, do you have any doubt whatsoever in your mind that it would be handled differently in that situation?
No. The example I used was if someone put up a poster that said, God loves the dreamers, referring to DACA, which the president has made numerous statements on to say we'll protect, DACA students and such. And if that student had put something like that up, which perhaps could be offensive to people who have different views about immigration, but is connected to, roughly connected to the stance of the American bishops, and if that student had been harassed in any way, if the sign had been torn down, the college would have gone into full lockdown, and especially if the student had been threatened with rape, I don't think we'd even be conducting classes.
Yeah, I mean, there would be police on campus, right? This would be a pretty big deal. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's very clear, Providence College, I'm sure you're familiar with these kinds of things. When I came here 20 years ago, we were one of the holdovers. You have to divide Catholic colleges and universities between the sort of the startups or the restarts, like Steubenville, and most of the colleges in which Catholic identity has gone away. or has been reduced to social justice.
Right.
Certain social justice courses, causes exempting pro-life and those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And colleges that, for whatever reason, kind of held on more or less to their Catholic identity. When I came to Providence College, we were one of those places. We were on the Newman Guide. We were just simply one of those places, like University of Dallas would be another one.
Yeah.
That people knew that Catholicism was, it wasn't Steubenville, it wasn't Christendom, but it was a pretty strong. When I came, there were many older professors, members of what I call the Flannery O'Connor generation, that were Catholic humanists, and it really imbued the place. That has all changed now.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Professor Tony Esolen left the school last year, and it was a pretty big deal when he left. And he kind of talked about this idea of, that he could live with a school that was committed to the humanities like Providence College used to be. He could live with an unreservedly Catholic school where humanities needed to be shored up. But what he couldn't do is to be at a Catholic school no longer committed to the humanities, where big decisions were secular, and the campus is politicized and treacherous. It's an impossible system to navigate. And I mean, I kind of feel like that's sort of a bellwether. He left, and now the next thing you know, this is the next big story.
I think that's exactly right. The big change that happened at Providence College, which in many ways is a very good and needed change, is that we were committed. We began to be committed with our president, Father Brian Shanley, to diversity. We were basically a upper middle class school for kids from Long Island and Boston and things like that, and we needed to reflect the diversity of the church, the Catholic Church, and we also needed to become a place that Catholic parents and Catholic families could send their kids without breaking their bank. And so there was a lot of effort, and this is to be praised, on the part of the administration to bring in students that otherwise couldn't have afforded or wouldn't even come because they would be such the minority on campus.
Right.
That was great. That's exactly the kind of thing that a Catholic institution should do, the Catholic Church institution on the planet and in human history. So it's in our wheelhouse. The problem is that we did not go the Catholic route towards diversity and inclusion. We went the secular, and I would even say, I don't want to get people upset here, but the Marxist route, meaning the identity politics route, where you put one group of students over and against another group. And I think that's what Dr. Esolen, was referring to as the politicization of the college. There were a number of us, I was definitely part of that said, let's approach this issue, inclusion and diversity, from a Catholic perspective, because as long as when we're talking about race and ethnicity, Catholicism has got a long experience and, not a perfect record, of course, nothing is, but a long experience of doing this kind of thing. Let's do it that way. And we just couldn't, the people they hired to implement the diversity and inclusion goals, on the whole, did not know the Catholic faith. They were not approaching it from a Catholic perspective, and therefore they were ultimately what we got was this sort of us versus them dynamic. And then you include, that's bad enough the way our country works as far as race and ethnicity, mostly race, but then you include a much more difficult issue, which is what about welcoming and including homosexual students or students with gender dysphoria and such. That becomes a much greater issue. And that if all you can talk about is that Providence College will do everything it can to make everyone feel welcome, you're basically setting these students up to be betrayed when it turns out that Catholicism has something to say. I believe it's true, and I believe it's beautiful and welcoming and affirming, but in our secular society, it can be seen as bigoted and exclusionary, And a number of us, again, said, let's deal with this issue from the get-go, not giving the students one impression and then pulling the rug out from under when an issue comes up about whatever.
I mean, how can you have a Catholic identity as a school if ultimately what you're educating your student body in isn't leading them toward our eternal destination, right?
Right. You can't, and especially you can't when certain aspects of the Catholic faith are seen by the society as contrary to human dignity, hate speech, or bigotry. You gotta approach that issue, boldly and honestly, because my concern primarily is the dishonesty, and then Catholicism not only says things some of these students don't want to hear, but it also comes across as betrayal, as not being what was promised. And that is exactly where Providence College has landed itself. And Michael has exposed what some of us saw before, not as great prophets, I think anyone could have seen it, but he's exposed the fact that we've now given the impression to many of our students, the activists in particular, that they need to be safe from Catholic teaching about sexuality and marriage.
Right, yeah.
And that's a catastrophe.
It is absolutely a catastrophe. It's a self-defeating proposition. So let's come back to the issue with Michael specifically. I mean, he told me that the night before last, he was called to this meeting. I think if I'm not mistaken, 75 people, most of them or all of them college employees, to talk about this issue. He said that it came across as, we're just going to basically bring you in here and all vent about how much trouble you've caused the school. And then everybody was asked to turn in their cell phones so that nobody could record it. Were you present at this meeting?
I wasn't present because I'm not allowed to be present.
Ah, okay.
I did speak. This was an all RA meeting,
Okay.
resident hall advisor. And one of the things that Michael has been facing is that when he goes to these meetings, he needs to make sure that there's a record, because we're like many other colleges. We've devised, not Steubenville, thank God, but we've devised this system where you can get in trouble for violating what is called, our bias rules. And Michael, of course, is concerned that one of the paybacks for causing so much trouble for the college is that someone is going to accuse him of making a homophobic statement or a racist statement, because this all gets mixed up, a statement, and then try to get him into serious trouble.
Right.
And so Michael is very loath, understandably so, in my opinion, is very loath to put himself in a situation where he can be, where someone can claim he said something and then try to get the school to go after him.
Right.
That, unfortunately, happened with Dr. Esselin. It's happened with other faculty and students. It's a very bad system we have here. And so he wanted to make sure that there was an objective record of everything that was said about him and anything that he might say. It is also contrary to our rules that when a student makes a claim of Title IX in particular...
Can you just briefly explain for the listeners who don't know what that is, what Title IX is?
Title IX began, of course, with the notion that students should have equal access to educational opportunities.
Okay.
Most people know about that with, female athletes must have the same kind of opportunities to play and to get scholarships as male athletes. That's what it began as.
Okay.
The Obama administration changed it to include sexual harassment and made it really put some very, very strong and ultimately problematic, but let's just stick with the strong, requirements on schools that they had to police sexual harassment, thinking, rightly so, that females, if they can be harassed on a campus without punishment and due process and
Right.
fairness, that they are being deprived of an educational opportunity. So the Obama administration had really added to athletic opportunities and other kinds of opportunities that colleges needed to set up systems by which claims of sexual harassment and sexual assault would be treated. And within them, they put very strong expectations upon the college that if a student comes forward with a complaint about sexual harassment or assault, that student is protected. Well, the cartoon, which maybe your listeners have seen, that was put up in Michael's the bathroom that is on Michael's hall of him being anally raped for putting up the poster, is a Title IX incident.
No question.
No question. If it was for a woman, it would be super no question. But anyone with any sense knows that it's also the same thing for a man.
Right.
So you would expect, and I believe it's required that the college do what it can to protect Michael from any backlash that he might suffer for making this accusation. And, I'm not a lawyer, and this is something that the lawyers, I guess, are going to have to figure out. But I don't think that you have, when someone makes a claim like that, and it's not a claim everyone knows.
It's documented. I mean, he's got a photo of the thing. Yeah.
It's documented. That you don't have a meeting where people then get to pile on the person
right.
who brought them. This seems to be so obvious to me. And the dynamic, your listeners may say, for goodness sakes, what's going on? It's really not that surprising when you realize that the college's greatest concern at this point, it could have changed in the last, 48 hours, but up to this point, is not to do anything to signal their lack of concern about issues of homophobia and any sort of violation of safe space for underrepresented groups.
So this is what I wanted
That's been their primary. That's what's guided all of their decisions.
Yeah. So this is what I wanted to ask you is, I mean, why is this happening? This is crazy to me that it's across the board silence. We're just not going to deal with this. We're going to pretend like it didn't happen. He's not getting any acknowledgement or recognition. Do you think it strikes me as more than just complicity with a politically correct ideology? This is like they're living under a reign of terror. They're totally afraid of. Yes.
Yes. I mean, one of the things that happened, the reason I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. When Dr. Estlin wrote his piece about the diversity cult, not the best title in the world, but when he didn't pick it, but when he wrote it, it was after Providence College had a wave of sort of what is called the demands. This comes out of the Black Lives Matter movement, and they occupied Father Shanley's office. He's our president, Father Shanley, and they required him to sign a pledge to work on fulfilling these demands. Well, anyone with any sense would have said, gosh, if they have legitimate concerns, they should be dealt with, but not in the character of demands, But nonetheless, that's not what happened. Father Shanley did sign it. It was posted to Instagram and all that kinds of thing. And that gave this group of students, they're just kids, and you give them this sort of power, that can go to one's head, And I think in some ways we've seen the bad side. The good side, of course, is, when you bring in students who have not historically been here, black students and Hispanic students and students from lower socioeconomic things, you've got to really make an effort to make sure that they feel, okay here. Mm-hmm. And you can only do so much because, we've all been to high school. We know how that works.
Right.
But nonetheless, that was kind of screwed up. and it turned, as I said, sort of very politicized. And so this group now has believes with good reason that if they, if they complain loud enough, the administration will hear them. And they've made it very clear to the administration, especially the dean of the vice president for student affairs, that there will be no siding with Michael.
But I mean, you're a theology professor. Yeah. This is a Catholic college. To what degree can these? How are these kids' expectations being so mismanaged that they think that coming to this school, there's not going to be a protection of Catholic teaching on campus, not just in the classroom, not just from the pulpit, but the freedom of speech of the students to say, "Hey, I'm a Catholic. We're Catholic. This is what we believe."
It's about orientation. It's about saying these things right from the beginning. I've been in some meetings surrounding. Of course, now things have gotten really hot. But when in the very beginning of this, I had some nice meetings with people who sort of realized, heck, we've given these students this impression, and it's a bad one.
Right.
And let's retrace our steps and see where we could have made this very clear. And normally that's orientation.
So
because
right on your way in the door.
Ourselves as a Catholic college. Go on our website, you'd think we're Steubenville or something like that. It's everywhere you go. But when you come to campus, for those orientation meetings, the Dominicans, and we have a good group of young Dominicans on campus that are very eager to do this kind of thing. Their participation in those orientations have really been non-existent or just cursory. That has to change. This is a serious wake-up call that that formation, if I could use that term, was not done. In fact, the opposite was done. They were given expectations that Catholicism would play no real role in their lives.
Well, I mean, I hope they're getting that message. I hope they're hearing that wake-up call, whether or not they're being silent about it now. But, you bring up such an important point. You say you look at the website, you'd think it was Steubenville. What do you say to a Catholic parent? I mean, it's an age-old story. Catholic parent sends their kid to a Catholic school thinking they're going to get a Catholic education, and they come home an atheist, or they come home, totally, believing something other than what the church teaches. But
yeah.
What should Catholic parents be thinking about sending their son or daughter to Providence College, expecting an authentic Catholic environment?
Well, I am an employee of the college, and I can tell you that. First of all, I can tell you, what do I say? I've had occasion to have these conversations, and what as I say is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am sorry that my college operates this way. I can also say that there are a group of faculty that will do their best to educate your son and daughter and to befriend them. And the Catholic faculty here have worked in recent years to form little communities, platoons of Catholic faith and culture. We've not gotten very much cooperation from the administration, in fact, zero. But Providence College is unique. It is unique in the entire country because it is the only college that is run by one of the few male orders in the United States, which is increasing numbers. That's the St. Joseph Province. Most people who know the St. Joseph Province through the Thomistic Institute or through the Magnificat, they think of the St. Joseph Province as very dynamic and very hopeful because they have so many young men coming to for their vocations. They had to build an extra wing onto the House of Studies in D.C.
Right.
And they're the ones who own Providence College. Go figure. And so, what do I say? I say, well, the young Dominicans have not quite made their mark yet. It's a struggle within the province. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but the sheer numbers of young Dominicans is going to have its effect. At the moment now, there are very few young Dominicans who are permanent faculty members. They send them here for a couple of years. You may know, your listeners might know, that the group of them, 4 young Dominicans, sent out a message from the chaplain's office, which I think is now on the internet, not supportive of Michael, but putting the not explicitly supportive of Michael, but making it very clear that the poster was put up within a context, basically as a response to a lesbian marriage one.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a sign of hope. There's hope here.
Is that sign on the website? I mean, is that statement on the website? I'd like to put that up in our show notes for people to look at.
It's on, I believe it's on the Life site.
Okay.
One. No, the college didn't even send it out to the faculty. They're keeping it basically. They're putting that light under a bushel.
Come to Providence College, where our Catholicism is in stealth mode, 24/7.
Yeah, but you can't really do that with the internet.
Yeah,
and so that thing is out there, and it's a beautiful statement. I wish it'd come out a little bit stronger that Michael was not to be harassed, but they're the chaplains, and that's really not for them. I mean, they can't really make that assertion, and it's a good statement. You might know the Bishop of Providence, Thomas Tobin, has sent a letter to Michael, which is really good, and I think Michael is free and has put that on the internet as well.
When did he receive that? Because I know that the bishop was tweeting a couple of things. I saw that, but I don't think Michael mentioned
the letter,
it to me.
I believe yesterday morning. Yes, and it's a really good. It's a good statement. It's what you would hope for from a local ordinary. I mean, he doesn't run the college,
right?
But he definitely calls. He says it's very, very beautiful and pertinent. He says that Providence College stands at a crossroads, and this has been revealed. So, I myself think we passed the crossroad a couple of miles back, and we'd have to go back to get to the crossroad. But just stop driving and turn around.
Yeah, you got to do that thing where you ask for directions. Don't keep going.
Exactly.
My wife tells me that all the time, but
I don't expect the bishop to say anything other than, because he doesn't want to communicate that all hope is lost at Providence College, and it's not.
Right.
But if I were a Catholic parent and if I had a son like Michael, I would think twice.
Yeah.
Because Michael's parents, one of the first things that happened is that Michael's father, I've met the Michael's parents, and they're wonderful Catholic parents. They contacted the president and asked for a meeting right when this thing was getting going, and it was refused. It was refused, and that is I can't remember if Michael says that in any of his things, but to me, right there was, if I were a Catholic parent and I knew that, and by the way, the president has, up to this point, unless Michael has sent me a text, has made no attempt to speak with Michael. We're a 4,000 student college. We're not
right.
the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
This is not hard. You sit the student down, you have a conversation, but that has been refused. And
what about you? Are you getting pushback for your defense of Michael in the situation?
I am. I'm tenured, and they can't really mess with me too much. And plus, my wife works here, so that gives me a bit of a shield. My name has been besmirched, amongst the student body as some sort of crazy racist homophobe.
Which basically means it's a badge of honor for everybody who wants their kids to learn something.
But the thing is, and that's disturbing to me. I'm not in any way that person. Michael came to me. I didn't know him before this happened. I am a person who is known for knowing the ropes how you negotiate the policies, because I also was the advisor to Dr. Esselin, as he would tell you. I just happen to know because I was involved in writing up a lot of our procedures. And so, people come to me and, I help them out if I can. And I've been so impressed with Michael. He is such a tremendous young man.
He's a sharp kid.
So ashamed of Mike. Yeah, super sharp. And he speaks, he's his own guy. He's a little bit older than your freshman. I think he's a year older because he was in the seminary.
Mm-hmm.
He is nobody's puppet, that's been said.
No, he is not.
You meet him, you talk to him for 2 seconds, and you know this guy knows exactly what he's about. He's really much better than the college deserves. And it's been my honor to really help him. And the fact that the college can't come straight out and say Catholic speech is not hate speech, and it's what's happened to Michael is completely and utterly unacceptable. I'm an old Catholic faculty member, and talk to any Catholic faculty member who's not at Steubenville. We've been through the wars.
Yep.
And we've developed our wounds and our cynicism. But I did not predict this one. I thought, this is easy. It's right down the center of the plate. This is something they can really simply say, we wish he hadn't done it because, it's not prudent, blah, blah, blah. But it's Catholic teaching, and the idea that you're safe from Catholic teaching at our college is a misunderstanding that we're probably responsible for. I thought they would say it. They didn't say it. The chaplains came really close to saying it. I'm super happy about that. It took the bishop to say it. I wouldn't have predicted any of those things.
Well, I think that the only thing that we can really do, Michael needs the support of his fellow Catholics, and that's why we're doing this interview. That's why the stories are being written, because there has to be accountability. And the university or the college apparently doesn't think that they need to be accountable, and they do. So I want to thank you for coming on and talking to me about this. So thank you.
Yeah, let me thank you because I've been very gratified that the Catholic press has decided that this is something that needs to be reported, and it gives a certain protection to Michael. And I've been gratified by it. So I'm very happy to speak with you.
Well, we're just doing our jobs, and I know you are too. And please pass my regards to the resistance of faculty there who are holding the ground for those parents who are sending their kids there. I mean, we need you guys to stay in the trenches. So thank you.
I'll be happy to do that. Thank you again.
All right. Bye-bye. You've been listening to the OnePeterFive podcast. This has been a production of OnePeterFive Incorporated, copyright 2018, all rights reserved. If you have downloaded this podcast through iTunes, we encourage you to go there and leave us a review to help others find and enjoy our show. If you would like to support our work, go to OnePeterFive.com/donate to make a tax-deductible contribution. This not only helps to pay for web hosting and the fine content we provide, but keeps food on our tables, coffee in our cups, and the lights on, which really helps us see what we're doing. Until next time, I'm Steve Skojek. Thanks for listening.